Hey VC, what's up? It's me, yours truly, VC Cheer, all you guys and gals out there. Just back to do a quick video here. I want to actually do a video response to Litebreeze 55. This is her 300 subscribers contest. As always, first and foremost, congratulations. Definitely deserve every single one of them and more. I consider Shannon to be the foremost authority in the VC on female artists, singer-songwriter artists. She's all about that stuff and just has a total wealth of knowledge on that. I've learned a lot of stuff from watching her videos. So yeah, I mean, congratulations, Shannon. You definitely deserve it, and I'm glad you are kind of doing your first contest. So, in light of that, to honor you and your 300 subs contest, this is what I have playing in the background. Little Joni Mitchell, Courtney Spark there. So yeah, that's in honor of one of your favorite artists. So anyway, very good thread you put together. I knew it'd be kind of tough to go through and do, but at the same time, I can't tell you how much I was laughing and just huge smiles on my face, just kind of reminiscing as I was going through the process of pulling out this stuff. But she had a really cool thread, which is basically kind of musical snapshots of 5-year segments in your life. So like what was going on with you musically at 5 years old, 10 years old, 15, 20, and kind of on down the line. So I knew that was going to be tough because, as you guys know, I love so many different genres of music, and you know, they've all kind of come at a lot of different random ways at different points in my life. So I think I figured out a pretty efficient way to kind of narrow it down. So let's kind of jump into it. We'll start off here around age 5. And, you know, at that point in time, you know, there's a number of different things I kind of experienced, but the way I looked at it was like, especially at that younger age, what were the albums, songs, artists, whatever, that just like seared memories into my head, just like clearer than anything else from that time frame in my life. And these were the ones that did it. And these first two may actually go to like 7, 8 years old, but still, Queen, Another One Bites the Dust, 45, and Kool and the Gang, Celebration, little VCLT that came here. These were two of the first 45s I remember asking my mom to go out and get for us. And my younger brothers and I, we played these things to death. The B-side, Don't Try Suicide. You know, again, that song is just seared in my head because I had no idea about it until we had this 45, and I listened to it over and over, but just, you know, it's just most things got burnt in your head or whatever. And of course, Kool and the Gang, Celebration. But the two that really take the cake, I think these two songs are more associated with me being 5 years old, or right at that kindergarten time frame, than any other song ever. And number one is Debbie Boone's You Light Up My Life. I'm sorry, I'm going to adjust the lighting here a little bit. Look, it's getting a little bit dark or something, I don't know. But Debbie Boone's You Light Up My Life, 45. Man, I used to have one of those little flip down turntables with the two speakers that connected on the sides. And I know I had other records at the time, but this is the only one that I vividly remember having. And I would play You Light Up My Life over and over and over. Even talk to Debbie Boone through the speaker sometimes. You know, little 5-year-old kid, I was there. And I remember that, let's say, more so than anything else at that point in time musically. So that definitely marks Mr. Hall of Fame at age 5. The next one here was probably just as big, if not, well, I say just as big as Debbie Boone. And again, just one of those moments I'll never forget. It probably really kind of guided me down a certain path of music. I'm 5 years old, maybe 4 or 5, and living in North Carolina at the time. We're driving to the mall. Dad's driving, mom's in the passenger seat, sister's in the driver's side passenger rear seat, I'm sorry, driver's side rear seat. I'm in the passenger side rear seat. Just how vivid I remember this. We're trucking along, and Heart of Glass by Blondie comes on the radio. And I'll never forget, that was the first time I heard it. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I always jokingly say my first boy-girl thing was to Blondie's and Heart of Glass that night I heard in the car. And and really what I mean by that is, you know, when you're 5th grade or whatever, you don't have anything to do with girls. You know, they're stupid, they're nasty, they're, you know, yucky, you don't talk to them, you know, whatever. But that was like one of the first times I remember, like, a girl outside of my family or whatever being someone that I thought was actually cool. It was like, you know, like, whoa, she's cool, she sounds cool, she, you know, it's like all this stuff as a kid, it just makes you think like, you know, wow, that's cool, that type of thing. That song did it, and I just remember being floored by it. And again, that was like 4th or 5th grade. And, you know, I pretty much kind of feel the same way when I listen to it today. It's just like, oh, that's cool. You know, Debbie Harry, man. So yeah, that those 4 albums right there definitely kind of mark my age 5 category there. There's one more song I'll throw into that too, which I didn't pull out for whatever reason. You Can Ring My Bell. You guys remember that old disco song? That's another one that's kind of seared in my brain because, again, I'm 4 or 5 years old. There was a pool at the apartment complex where we stayed, and there was a pool house up there too. It was kind of a bigger one. It had a little bit of a bar, and it kind of had like a dance floor and all that stuff. And my dad and I went in there in the middle of the day, so there was no one there. Just the person, kind of like the so-called bartender. And my dad used to go up there and buy me pickles sometimes. I love pickles. I have like the biggest craving for those things. But anyway, the song "You Can Ring My Bell" was playing that night when I was that day when I was in there. And again, it's just one of those moments I just never forgot. So between those 5 songs / albums, that pretty much sums up 90% of what I automatically remember and recall from age 5 and musically. So now let's move on from age 5 to around age 10ish, somewhere in there. So we're talking like 5th grade-ish, somewhere around that point. Now the one thing I'm going to do is, as we go through this, I'm not going to talk about 80s new wave or 80s R&B, because right around this time period, age 10 or so, 80s new wave and 80s R&B just exploded for me, and it just kept going and going and going up until yesterday. So I'm not going to include any 80s, really much of any 80s new wave or 80s R&B. That's just a given at around age 10, right after we had moved. I was in 5th grade. You know, MTV and Video Soul, especially Video Soul and BET, I mean, my music range just exploded at that time frame. Very influential age for me musically. But these are some of kind of the things that really stick out around that time period. And this does kind of go with the new wave thing, but I want to point this one out. Billy Idol's Rebel Yell, 5th grade. I'm right around age 10. This is one album that took me over, that I listened to like crazy. And this is the actual cassette. I mean, this is the one that I had from back in 5th grade. I've never gotten rid of this. And amazingly, the words and everything are still in great condition. But, yeah, Billy Idol and U2 were the ones that I think I saw on MTV for the first time. The video for Eyes Without a Face and the video for I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, and that was a big part of my 80s new wave explosion. So 5th grade, I was playing the heck out of Billy Idol. I'm sitting over here. There was also 5th grade, 5th and 6th grade, Twisted Sister Stay Hungry. Really was digging this album around that time frame. The whole neighborhood was. There was 4 of us, Matt, John, Derek, and myself. We all had this cassette, and it never left our boom boxes that summer between 5th and 6th grade. We played the heck out of this album. I still have the tape to it. It's all worn down, the letters are missing and everything, but I'm never getting rid of it. So, 5th grade, that was definitely, that one took the cake right there. One of the first like really hard rock bands or slash hair metal bands I ever got into was that Twisted Sister. 1984, obviously Jump, Panama, all that stuff. I mean, of course, he played the heck out of this one as well. So that was something I was playing a ton of at that point in time. You know, Sammy Hagar's I Can't Drive 55, all that stuff. Because again, you know, you're talking now early 80s, early 80s. That's when the hair bands and everything came into play too. So all the Poison stuff was starting to come about, and you know, Slaughter, and just on Quiet Riot, on and on and on. Next, Purple Rain. When I got my first boombox, this was a cassette I got that same day. And of course, back then, everything got played. Everything. I mean, even Let's Go Crazy, I would listen to it on a regular basis. And I'll never forget the day I was playing this on the couch, and my brothers and I were sitting there kind of singing along with it, and the song Darling Nikki came on. And you know that part, met her in a hotel lobby masturbating with a magazine? My mom's like, what the heck are you guys doing? We didn't know what masturbating was. It was just part of the song. So that's something else that makes this album kind of stick out. But yeah, you know, all the old school hip hop at that point in time, Fat Boys, Curtis Blow, Run DMC. That's when the hip hop thing was starting to really kind of blow up. LL Cool J, radio, and all of that. That stuff that was taking place back then as well. So those are some of the ones I remember, just, you know, the albums that I really, really played out, just to the point where it was just flat out ridiculous, were those right there. So that kind of takes us up through around age 10, 5th grade or so. So now you move up to maybe age 15, 16-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. So now we're talking, for me, high school, sophomore, college-ish, somewhere in that time frame. College-ish. Sophomore, junior in high school. And so a lot of stuff happened then too, because now we're talking about, you know, early 90s. Like, you know, 90, 91-ish, that type of time frame. And so, you know, that obviously was when Nirvana first hit. You know, so grunge, I experienced that at that point in time. And this is the actual single cassette that I bought back in 1991. The one that I bumped all the way through high school, of Smells Like Teen Spirit cassette. So a little bit worn over the years. I mean, it's been following me around, but that's the actual one from high school. That was also the same year I learned about AC/DC, that same time frame, right around my sophomore, junior in high school. And this was the very first album I ever heard by AC/DC. And keep in mind, during all this time frame, I'm still doing the whole, you know, new wave and all that stuff is, you know, still coming about. So all that's happening consistently. But these are kind of the new bands and somewhat different genres that started to come into play. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. Of course, that was one that took us by storm at that point in time. So back in high school. UB40. You know, I listened to a little bit of reggae up to then, mainly a little bit of Jimmy Cliff, but this was one of the first reggae albums that I really kind of got into and liked all the songs. I had a friend named Tony, actually, that introduced me to this. It's amazing how you remember that stuff. And my friend Tony introduced me to this album. Let me flip this over real quick. Alright. And then I think the most defining thing of that time period, my sophomore, junior yearish in high school, was that's when we started driving, you know, sophomore, junior year. And that's when most of us had our $1,000 cars with our $6,000 sound systems in the rear. And I'm totally guilty of that. I had a little two-door Dodge Colt. I have to tell you a story about this car sometime, but you know, I was happy as heck to have that car. And yeah, I had this little raggedy car that I spent $500 to buy a transmission to put in it, because my mom had owned the car, then my brother took it to college and he broke it down, and it was just sitting, and I'm like, $500, new transmission, I have a car. So I did it. And yes, I put 215s and 210s and all kinds of stuff in the back. But that was right about the time when old school hip hop, you know, your Fat Boys and Run DMC and all of that were still going, but the whole quote unquote gangster rap stuff took over. So at that point in time, that's when things started coming on the scene, like DJ Quick is the name. Some nice VCOT that I got from the teacher quite a while ago. The Ghetto Boys, especially like the original Ghetto, not original, but the early Ghetto Boys, like Scarface and all that kind of stuff. You know, that became big for me then. Everybody who was anybody that had a single amplifier or 15 amplifiers in the back of their trunk were all sporting Too Short. Everybody bumped Too Short. And this is Life Is Too Short. This one and Born to Mac, everybody had those two albums. And then of course you had stuff like NWA and stuff like more NWA, 100 Miles and Running. And again, this is one that everybody played too. This was that time frame. I even look back on it now, I can't figure out how we did it, because at least how I did it, I don't know how other people feel about it. As long as it was bassing your car so hard that you thought your rims were going to fall off, you didn't care what language was in it or whatever else, and we went up and down the streets just bumping some of the foulest language just as loud as we could play it. I'm saying that because I remember the song Just Don't Bite It on here was probably one of the most played songs my junior year. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys remember that. It's the world's biggest. No matter, just don't bite it. It's just foul. But oh my gosh, we played the heck out of that. So that definitely kind of sums up 15, 16 year mark, somewhere in that area. So then we moved 5 years ahead, and I'm in my 20s or whatever. So now I'm in college. So I'm still doing the 80s new wave thing, all that good stuff. But a few different things kind of come into play. When I get into college, the rap thing started to change a little bit. I mean, there was still the whole gangster stuff out there, but still new R&B stuff's coming around. I'm still evolving with that and everything. But kind of the new side of rap that I really started to get into at that point in time was stuff like Black Sheep. I remember this was one that we played a lot in college. That was a huge hit. We used to play that tape a lot. And then stuff like Tribe Called Quest. So that type of hip-hop started to become a little more, my thing, if you will, in college. Also stuff like Public Enemy, Can't Trust It, Shut 'Em Down, all that good stuff. That was really big for me back in college too. It kind of came on the scene. I mean, I loved Public Enemy prior, so they really just kind of kept doing their thing, but still. But then other things that are new things that came about. Again, I'm still doing the whole 80s thing and new wave and all of that. But stuff like New Order, that became big for me in the college years. I had a suite mate who was a soccer player, and between the hours of 5 and 7 was when you could play your stereo as loud as you wanted to or whatever else, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And one of the things he played all the time was this New Order. He would always play Bizarre Love Triangle, just blasting as loud as he could play it. And I used to hear it over and over and just be like, man, that's an awesome song. And, he told me what it was, and eventually I kind of started to get into that. So that's about that time, so somewhere right around 20, 21, somewhere in that area, I discovered New Order. Same thing with these other two. Live, Salmonella there, and then especially this one, Live Throwing Copper. There was a girl who used to play volleyball. Very, very cool girl, and she had this CD, and she loaned it to me one time. And I just, made a tape out of it or whatever, but I played the heck out of it. And so this was very big for me back in college as well, at that point in time. A few other things that became big then. You know, Cranberries. I started getting into that kind of stuff back in college. That's when I first fell in love with them. Oddly enough, this freaking song, The Power of Love by Celine Dion. In college, I fell in love with that. Matter of fact, this is the single that I bought back in college. So I don't know where that came from, but that's when I first fell in love with Celine. And then 10,000 Maniacs. This is another one that took me by storm back then. Candy Everybody Wants. That song was just beauty. Other things from college, PM Dawn. I didn't pull out everything, but PM Dawn, Spin Doctors. What else? Gin Blossoms. I kind of got into them. So that type of stuff started coming into play along with the other, again, new wave stuff that was always in play. So then moving on, so let's say that's college, so 25, 26-ish, graduate college. So what am I doing then? Let's see, so we were talking then, that's like right around almost 2000, somewhere right in that ballpark. So I'm still doing my typical R&B stuff, 80s R&B, new wave, you know, Peter Gabriel's, and again, I'm just thinking about stuff that's popping in my head, Commodores, all the kind of traditional stuff. Some of the newer bands that come on the scene for me then, we're talking like say around 25 or so, is Dave Matthews Band. Probably Crash a little more so than this album, but that was definitely one. Stuff like Jewel, Pieces of You, started listening to her around that point in time. Even though this was kind of really more of an 80s band, somewhat. Erasure, I started listening to them a bit more around that time. And just a lot of stuff like that. Smashing Pumpkins, that's really when I started kind of listening to them. Megadeth came in for me kind of around that time, you know, 25-ish, somewhere in there. Who else was I digging? Static X was around that same time. So yeah, just, you know, a lot of different things like that started to come in with my kind of traditional stuff at that point. I did leave this one out from the high school years, Ron C. Another one of those bass tracks we used to listen to all the time. And DJ Magic Mike, that's another one. I can't leave those out from the high school years, because they were all about the bass, boy. So that takes us up to age 25-ish or so. So then we go into, what's the next one here? I guess early 30s now, 30, somewhere around that time frame. So during that time, that's really when again, everything else is going the same way that it's going. I'm still into hip-hop, and I'm starting to get more into metal and blah, blah, blah. But then the new thing that kind of comes on the scene in my 30s is, more so than anything, probably smooth jazz. So stuff like Jim Horn, you know, that's when I started checking out stuff like that. Kenny G, even though I discovered this back in college, I really started listening to smooth jazz more, like I said, in my 30s. So, and then, you know, Najee is kind of another example. So that was really the big change in my 30s that kind of came about. Everything else was just still evolving from where it was. And so then when you go from 30s to mid-30s, you know, all that good stuff, which is, you know, kind of maybe 3 years ago for me, like, when you start looking at that, that's pretty much what you've seen in all the VC stuff. I mean, I think it's almost been like I'll add a layer, it continues to grow, and then I'll add another layer that starts to grow with it, another layer. So I'm kind of at that point in life right now where I have like all these layers that are consistently growing. And so when you ask, you know, so if you look at now, or just like at your 30 or 35 mark in this whole thread thing, it's pretty much what you've seen on my videos. It's been truly everything kind of equally across the board. I would maybe say, as I've gotten into my mid-30s, early to mid-30s, classic rock became much bigger, but then again, so did jazz, and yeah, I really can't separate it out for that last stage there. I mean, it's really and truly everything that I listened to and really kind of defined who I was musically at this stage. So yeah, it's been kind of interesting seeing the evolution. And the one thing I always say about that too is, I know some people will say, like, you know, once upon a time I was really into this, but then I got more into that, and it doesn't really work like that for me. It's like once I'm into something, I'm gonna love it forever, and so the only thing I can do is add more to it. You know, there might be some songs like Stairway to Heaven I can't listen to anymore, but you know, that's kind of few and far between. And on top of that, even so, I'm still going to love it, and I'm still going to have it, and it's still going to be just a continual part of the growth of my musical taste and musical collection and everything else. So I think all that kind of takes you up to where I'm at now. So anyway, that's my response, Miss Breeze. Again, thank you for a great thread. I said it was really interesting kind of going and taking a look back. It was hard to leave out a lot of stuff, but I think I managed to do okay. So congratulations on the 100 subs. Great having you here. Love you to death. And we'll talk to you soon, VC. All right, take care, guys.